I want to lose weight, but I don't know how to get started.
What should I meal prep every week?
How do I get those sweet booty gains?
Inspiration for your healthy lifestyle. The Pound This Podcast with Amanda Valentine.
Thank you so much for listening to the Pound This Podcast. I am Amanda Valentine, very excited to be joined by a person who has created delicious meals that I have cooked myself and can vouch for. Macro wizard, recipe creator extraordinaire, and just like an amazing like life journey and story. Jess Valoy, how are you?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me on.
So I know you through Sarah and Team Fit With Me, and you work with Sarah of working with all of her clients of understanding macros and creating meals and all of that. But I know that you had to have a start somewhere before you learned all of this. So can you tell me what got you interested in health and wellness? Like, where did this journey begin for you?
Yeah. So I started, with my health and fitness journey when I was like a teenager, starting in on all the things Weight Watchers and I think I did the cabbage soup diet, all those things. So it's been a long journey of battling my weight. And then about 9 years ago, I had weight loss surgery. And that's when things took a big turn for me. Started building a community of people, making, connections and friendships with people all over the world, really, across the U.S., but all over the world, really. And I can recall early on, my husband would be like, why are people messaging you, asking these questions? Can't they just Google these things? So I've always kind of been used to being kind of like a source of information. And then, almost 5 years ago, Sarah and I started chatting on Instagram, and she was sharing some of her stuff with me, and I kind of dived deeper into it and signed up with her, and then now here we are. I partner with her with Team Fit With Me and teach other people how to do all these things. And in between all of that, there was a couple babies that happened and all sorts of stuff. It's been kind of a wild ride.
Yeah. So I know you're coming up on your anniversary of your surgery. Can you tell me about at the time, what made you make that decision and how did that whole process go? Because it's you hear really great success stories and a lot of horror stories. So it's what brought you there, and then how did it go?
Yeah. So I was seeing a doctor for about a year trying to figure out how to get my weight under control. Things that seemed like they should be working weren't. I was beating the crap out of myself, really going low calories, going to the gym for hours and hours. This was during a time where I didn't have full-time employment. So I was really spending hours at the gym. Couldn't get anything to move. And so they suggested it to me as kind of like a last ditch effort. And I did a lot of research. I started trying to find other people to talk to online. I was looking up YouTube videos, everything. And really the thing that drove me to finally make that decision is that I wanted to be able to have kids one day. And I knew that at 320 pounds, that was going to be a really difficult thing for me to do, if possible at all, because my hormones were all out of whack. I wasn't having, regular menstrual cycles. All those things were already impeded. And I was like, I don't know, 9 years ago, I would have to do some quick math, but I think I was like 25 at the time. So I was not quite there yet, ready to have kids, but I knew that it was going to be something that I wanted in the future. And that was kind of my last ditch effort. I thought, this is the last thing I have to try. And I went for it. And as you can hear in the background here, it worked.
So, did you find that the process of going through surgery a struggle at all? Because it's so strict.
Yeah. So my insurance had all sorts of hoops to jump through. You had to go through counseling and group sessions, diet for a certain, you had to do a diet for a certain period of time. And it took about 6 months to get through all of those prerequisites and things. But I'm glad that I had the time to really like think about things and research things and go through their hoops, because it's a big decision. I mean, you're changing your internal anatomy.
Yeah.
You can't really take that back.
So at what point did you realize after having that surgery? I know like so many people find a lot of like success in weight loss and then you kind of like plateau out. So where did you find, like, how did you find yourself like looking to have conversations with Sarah and like needing a coach?
Yeah. So I actually was one of those people that had complications with my first surgery and had to have a revision.
Oh no.
So I went from the sleeve to the bypass and then found some additional, success with that, but it also came with some complications. Got to my leanest weight, then I got pregnant, had a baby. A couple of years later, my bariatric basics weren't working anymore, and that's when I started talking to Sarah after I had my first son. And going back to all those basic tools was not yielding the same results anymore. I could, eat 700, 800 calories a day and my body wouldn't move at all.
Well, yeah, that's like nothing.
Yeah. Yeah.
So what did your process with Sarah look like then? Like, what did she have you to start doing to reach your goals?
She started reverse dieting, and that was something that I thought was like a made up term. I had never heard of it before. I didn't understand it until, she dove deeper into that process with me and kind of explained what we were doing. And then it made sense, and I trusted her and gave it a try, and then started seeing some differences in my results, and not always with the scale. My scale is still pretty temperamental. We call her cunty because she just does what she wants. Yeah. But I was seeing composition changes. So I could see in those weekly photos that, things were moving, clothes were fitting differently, stuff was happening. And so I continued to learn from her and ask questions and try to get as much as I could from her. And made us kind of a little like side comment to her one time that, maybe one day when I get to my goal, I could see myself, coaching or something, because I really like what you're doing here. And she was like, don't tease me. Like, we could totally make that happen. I would love to have some help. And that's kind of where things kicked off from there. Started helping her out with little project things, ran a challenge with her, and then just continued to take on more duties, week by week, month by month, to get to where I'm at now.
So how did you're so good with macros and stuff, which I want to get into all of that, because I've counted macros. I'm a certified nutritionist, everything, and I still find it daunting and it's confusing and it's math, which I don't want to do. So it's like, did you find in that process of helping Sarah of like, oh, I'm really good at this and I understand this and I can create recipes based on this? Is that kind of like how that flow happened?
Kind of. I think the part that I'm good at isn't necessarily like the macro piece of it necessarily. It's about using the technology that I have to make shortcuts. Okay. So Googling recipes, finding different swaps and things that can be used in those recipes to make them still taste good, but be, a little bit friendlier on the macro situation. We like to use an app called Chronometer. I like the desktop version of it. I found that I can swap things easily. It does a lot of the math for me. It has nationally verified databases, so I trust a lot of the data that's in there as far as what the macros are. And they've continued to improve it, so it makes my life a little bit easier. I really think that the reason why it seems like it's so easy for me is just the sheer volume that I'm doing all the time. So I'm not just doing my own macros. I'm doing them for a bunch of other people too. So I get to practice a lot. Yeah. And I'm still, learning and perfecting and finding different things that work better. We're always trying to improve over at Fit With Me, always trying to change things, always trying to find what's going to help people. And with that, my methods change and I try to focus on different things. Like fiber has been a new one that we've really focused on in the last, year or so. And that's made a big difference, is putting that focus on fiber as well as the other three macronutrients.
So do you have any count of like how many recipes you've created at this point?
So officially there's 212 in there that are written and in chronometer that people can use with the instructions and everything like that. But there's also been more on the side where somebody says, hey, can you macro hack this for me? I have this recipe that I want to use. Can you add it to my diary? So I've done little side ones a lot where they don't necessarily make it into the full database. It'll just be fixing something for an individual. But that's also how I get a lot of the recipe database recipes is somebody says, hey, I want this thing. Can we make this happen? And then I write the recipe for it. They try it. Let me know if it worked or not. And then if it did, we throw it up. There's sometimes that they just, some things are not worth macro hacking. I think there's one recipe that's in the recipe database that a few people like, but most people are like, no. And it's this fudgy brownie, and it's made with potato.
Interesting.
So it's like potato, peanut butter, and cocoa powder, or you can use chocolate protein powder. And yeah, some people really like it, but a lot of people are like, that's a big no.
I would definitely try it. I mean, that's just like when I think people even hear like avocado brownies. I'm like, avocado brownies are like the bomb.
Avocado brownies I would try. I don't try all of the recipes that I put together. A lot of the times I'm putting them together for other people, and I let them test them out and then let me know. I do a lot less cooking than people probably assume that I do based on the things that I put out. I'm more in Sarah's camp, where I like a lot of like pre-cooked, easy throw together kind of meals where I'm not having to do a lot of work, but that's because I'm working 2 full-time jobs. I've got 2 young kids. I don't have time to be in the kitchen for 5 meals a day. I just don't.
So like what for you, I do want to get into like just like, you know, macro counting 101 here for a second. But before we do that, like what are your favorite meals? Like what do you usually eat on a day-to-day basis then?
Leftovers. But before we get to the leftover part, there's a couple meals that work for me and for my family that I can get away with, like the firecracker chicken one, if you've had that. That one's a good one. It's like a buffalo style sauce, and then I use the Truvia brown sugar with a little bit of apple cider vinegar, and it makes this really yummy, spicy, like Asian style sauce.
Interesting.
On chicken. And then it serves really well with some stir fry veggies and a little bit of jasmine rice. But that one goes over really well with everybody here, so I can get away with making that for myself and for everybody, because I like to not have to cook separate meals if I can get away with it.
Yeah. Well, it feels like that's a big question for a lot of people of how do I feed my family instead of I'm just cooking for me and then it like let everybody else fend for themselves.
And sometimes that's the answer for people. It really is a kind of an individual household kind of what works best. That works well for us to try to find things that I can either modify a little bit for myself and still mostly have the same meal for everybody else. Or sometimes it'll be like, you guys are going to have your frozen pizza and I'm going to make a salad and throw some deli meat on it and call it a day. Just kind of depends on what the flavor of the day is.
Yeah.
What other things am I doing a lot of? I like to do cottage cheese veggie egg scrambles.
Oh, interesting.
Cottage cheese is really having its day right now.
It really is. I'm not bad about it. I like cottage cheese.
I do too. I've made it into queso. I've done it with my eggs. I've tried the mac and cheese with the Bonza pasta, and that was pretty good.
Oh, that sounds good.
I found a cheddar cheese protein powder, so that with the
how is
cheese,
that?
It's pretty tasty. I mean, it's kind of like Kraft macaroni and cheese like powder almost, but it's like a collagen protein powder. So
interesting. I might have to try that. I'm not doing dairy at this current moment, but before that, I really also enjoyed the trend that is having its day along with cottage cheese is to like putting feta in a skillet and letting it cook and then putting an egg on it. That's also real good.
I've not tried that. I've seen it a lot.
Yeah, it's good. I would recommend. It's very tasty.
I also saw a lot of the cheddar cheese pickles. I never tried those, but I'm sure I could get down with that.
I haven't seen that. Is that just like adding like cheese powder in the pickles?
Cheddar cheese on a skillet, letting it get like crispy, and then rolling the pickle into it.
Oh. I mean, you can't go wrong with cheese, man. I mean, you can put cheese on anything.
I know. Yeah.
So if somebody like talking about like going to macro counting 101, of people that are just like, okay, like I'm hearing this term macro. First off, what does that mean? And then like, how the heck do I think most people really struggle of like, how do I know what my own macros are?
Mm-hmm.
And then, so there's step one, what the heck you talking about? 2, how do I know what I'm supposed to eat? And then 3, how am I realistically supposed to work this into my daily life?
Yeah. Well, macros are the 3 main macronutrients: proteins, carbs, and fats. And I think something that kind of gets lost a lot is like, it's like, why choose to count macros versus calorie counting?
Mm-hmm.
And really the basic reason that I've come up with is it just really helps you to understand the composition of your food and where your calories are coming from in your food. So if you're paying attention to the protein, carbs, and fats and things, you have a better understanding of like, okay, well, avocado is a healthy fat, but it's also a pretty significant carb source. And I don't think people look at an avocado and think carbs. They think avocado and they think fats.
Yeah.
And so I think some of that gets lost when we're just focusing on calorie counting.
That's true.
So it helps with getting more nutritional understanding as you're putting your meals together.
And just having a balance between everything too. So it's not just all of one thing. Like just pasta. It's all we got.
Right. Right. Well, I mean, protein and carbs, they are 4 calories for 1 gram. And then you've got fats, which are 9 calories for 1 gram. And so when you understand that, you can see how if you're not paying attention to your fats, you can really get out of your calorie deficit really quickly.
Yeah.
If you're not weighing that olive oil that you're tossing into the pan to cook your stuff, you can easily add 300 extra calories to your meal and not even realize it.
Yeah. So then once people got a handle on what that is, like how do you figure out what your own individual macros are if you're not using a coach to figure it out for you?
Yeah. I mean, the best first step is just to start tracking your normal calorie intake in some sort of a tracker or some sort of fashion, just to understand what your current intake is. The reason for that is we don't necessarily want to make any huge drastic changes to what your caloric intake is just to get you started off. If you're eating, 500 calories a day, it's outrageous. But if you were eating 500 calories a day, it'd be really silly for me to be like, okay, now I need you to eat 2,000 calories a day.
Yeah.
So having an idea of where your starting point is going to allow for you to figure out where your macros need to be, but in a reasonable shift from where you're at. So start tracking for, I would say, a minimum of a week, just to get a sense of what your weekdays, what your weekends, what all that looks like. The next thing that I recommend is figuring out what your lean body mass is. So not your weight. So I hear a lot of people saying, just eat your scale weight in protein, in grams of protein. Well, I don't need 200 grams of protein a day. I can tell you that.
Yeah, that's a lot to do.
Yeah. Yeah. So if you figure out what your lean body mass is, it's usually about like 0.8 to 1 gram of your lean body mass. And there's calculators online that will help you figure that out. You plug in your height, weight, gender, if you're breastfeeding, pregnant, whatnot, and it'll give you those numbers. And then from there, you kind of just fill in with the carbs and the fats. I typically like to keep my fats pretty moderate, so I keep them in like the 45 to 50 gram range. But I have an angry gallbladder that likes to, lash out every now and then. So some people are more comfortable with like 60 grams, 70 grams of fats, but it's really up to the individual on how they feel and what they enjoy from there. And then fill in the rest with carbs. So like if you were trying to hit, 1,500 calories, you'd figure out what your lean body mass is, take that amount of protein out of the calories, then do your carbs and your fats. And there's no perfect answer. Everybody's going to have a different way of kind of figuring that out. It's kind of a trial and error thing too, to see, volume wise, how things work for you, how things feel. And, for us, Sarah does all that figuring out. She tells me what people's macros are, and she does the weekly adjustments, and then I plug it in to make it look like a usable menu.
Yeah, and I think that's what's also the next like part that's like stressful is like, okay, well now I know what my macros are. Now how the heck do I cook for this? Especially if you're cooking for a family. So then it's like, you know, and especially like for me, it was stressful as a meal prepper where it's like, okay, how do I batch cook for these macros and then do it for the week? So it's like, I want to get it all done because then it does make the rest of the week easier to me as a person who prefers meal prepping. So that way I don't have to figure it out every time I eat. I'm figuring out my macros every day. That stresses me out, which is why I like to meal prep. But at the same time, it's a whole nother stressor. It's like you have this whole day of like, okay, how the heck do I make this work? And how do I break down this recipe and batch cook it? And then also plug that in for every meal the rest. So it's like either way, it's like pick your poison of what stresses you out or what works best for you. And again, like you were talking about, it's like so much like experimenting of try it all different ways. And you have to see what works best for you because what is best for me is definitely not best for other people. Other people hate meal prepping and that's totally fine. That's not for you. It's for me.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there's been quite a few different methods. A method that I've recently started implementing is providing people with a list of like 10 to 12 meals that are all like evenly set up so that the recipes have the same macros across the board. And then they can kind of just fill out their day, whether they're having 4 or 5 meals a day. They've got a list of meals and they can pick 4 of them. And it doesn't have to necessarily even be 4 different ones. They could repeat meals if they want. And that works pretty well. And that's something that I've kind of been doing for a while, but just kind of presenting it a little differently. So logistically, it just works out better if the meals are evenly split. That way you can decide, you know, oh, I plugged this on for my Monday, but I'm really not feeling it. I want that meal that I planned for Thursday. And you can swap them around without having to change up the rest of your day. If things are evenly split, it gives you more flexibility in your day-to-day choices. For somebody that isn't, you know, prepping out everything and putting it in containers and having it set up. A lot of people think they want more flexibility, but I find that the further that people get into this, they're a lot more routine than they think that they are.
Yeah. And that's where it's like, the feedback I've gotten from being a meal prepper for a decade is like, oh my God, I can't eat the same things every day, which is fair. I mean, again, everybody's different, but I'm like, if you kind of like really zoom out and look at the things that you eat on a normal basis, it's not wildly different. They're all just kind of the same thing-ish. It's just that like you're maybe having pizza a couple different times a week or something like that. Like it's the same but different, and it's just you don't see it the same as like, oh, I'm reheating chicken, rice, and broccoli. That's a snooze fest versus ordering a fresh pizza. So I mean, those are two different animals. So
for sure.
It's just and like, and then in just knowing yourself, I think it's, especially if you're just getting started, you really have to like learn, like you're going to fail. You're going to find stuff that you don't like and it sucks and you're going to have to learn that sucks. And I've had to do that a million times. And I've also learned, and I've talked with Sarah about this before through my coaching, like I have found too, that like I feel best when I do eat more fat. Like eating more fat for me makes me feel full. It makes me feel like clear headed. Like I just I like eating. I think it tastes good, but I just feel better. Not to go like full blown keto or anything, but to just have like a fat, heavier diet feels real good to me. And I'm like, but I only know that from years of testing and experience and, you know, and trying this and how does this make me feel? And I love carbs, and it feels like I think everybody wants to lean into like, I need my carbs. But it's like, for me, I'm like, I would rather, I mean, it depends on what the carb is, but like, if I had a choice between eating a couple slices of bread or eating a whole avocado, I'm like, give me the whole avocado. It's going to satiate me. I like it. I feel so much better from eating that, eating versus the same amount of, you think, calories in just straight up carbs doesn't give me the same, you know, oomph that it does. And I think that, you don't really know that until you try it.
I think the hardest pill for people to swallow is that it does take time to figure this stuff out.
Yeah, because it sucks.
Yeah. We want that instant gratification. We want those instant results. We want to have it figured out, and then we want there to be some magical answer. But the answer is going to be, you have to take a little bit of time to sort this stuff out, try some different things, and figure out what makes you feel good, because it's not going to be the same. Because for me, if I were to eat a whole avocado, I would be in so much pain. So, we're all different creatures that need different things at different times. I need different stuff now than I needed, 9 years ago. Our needs change as our seasons change and what our goals are. My goals are not the same as they were, 10, 12 years ago or whatever.
Well, even like what you brought up of how you went back to your old bag of tools that you had and it just didn't work anymore. So it's, I think myself included, and I think we all get into a habit if we did find something at one point that worked for us and then life happens, because it does, and you get thrown off track or things change or you move or you have kids or something. And then you're like, okay, let me go right back to what worked before, and it doesn't. Then we get frustrated and we get mad at ourselves and we bully ourselves. And it's just like, we're all living through the same thing. Obviously, it's like, how long does it take for that to like our brain to grab and be like, my body is not the same. I am not the same human I was yesterday. I have to try something different. But then it's so daunting because then it's like, oh, now I have to reinvent the wheel again. I found this thing I like that was easier. Now I'm going to have to find a whole new thing. And so it's just, it's frustrating. But at the same time, it's like, again, like choose your uncomfort. Like you're feeling obviously uncomfortable in your body. You're feeling a level of uncomfort that you want to change. So it's like, is that uncomfortable outweighing the uncomfortability of like, I got to learn how to count macros and cook differently. So like, it's like, pick your pain.
Absolutely. And that's something that comes up in every onboarding call that I do. I'm like, we try to make things really easy here. We give you tons of support, but disrupting your normal habits and routines, it's going to suck. It's going to be hard. Like there's no way to avoid it being hard. Whenever we're changing our routines, we're going to have some resistance. And we just have to keep, fighting through that and just understanding that it's not going to be easy. Even if you're hiring a coach and even if you have a team of people helping you and you have all the support, it's still going to be hard to do the things.
Yeah. It definitely makes it easier to have somebody be like, I can ask you questions. I'm frustrated, especially those days when you're like, I mean, how many of us have been like, I'm doing all the right things and nothing's working. And you're just like, I might as well just go eat everything then, because if I'm doing all this and it's not working, like everybody I think has hit that point at least once. But to have somebody be like, hey, can you talk me off the ledge? Can you just tell me like, this is probably your hormones or something you ate yesterday, or maybe you just had a stressful day or you didn't sleep right last night. Like somebody to just kind of be like, yo, chill, stay the course is like worth the money.
Right. The voice of reason. And then, she's so good at, and she being Sarah is so good at pointing things out in photos that I would never see myself.
Oh yeah. Well, first off, I would never take photos myself.
Fair.
Like, I mean, even as much as like I have discussed through my own journey and on this podcast of like, oh, if I had to go back, I would go back and take more photos. Like even now, like I'm still in process of everyday life is, and I'm like, I do not want to take pictures of myself. The only time I've ever consistently taken photos of myself is like when I'm working with Sarah, and Sarah's my coach, and it again, talk about like how your brain is stupid sometimes, where it's like, I know the benefit in that. I can see my progress. So even if I feel like crap that day and I'm like, I don't feel like getting in a bikini or my underwear and taking a picture, but you can see the results compared to a month ago or a week ago or whatever it is. It's like how helpful it is and what information it is, and it can make you feel better. There's still this like, that, but at the same time, you still won't do it.
Right.
I know how helpful it is and I still won't do it. Then you're like, why do I do this? Unless you got somebody there that says like, no, we need to like, that's where, for me, I find like that's super helpful, because I absolutely will not do it on my own. And I know how much it's a helpful tool. And that is just, again, how we all in our own ways get in our own way.
For sure. Yeah. I've seen some amazing progress in 1 week, and I didn't know that things could change so fast in 7 days.
Right.
I always think, 1 week, how much is that going to give? Well, if you really, I mean, in either direction, if you go hard, it can make a big difference.
Yeah. Oh, totally. And I mean, it's so crazy too. Again, talking about both directions, like how easy it is to undo months of hard work. Where it's like, dang. But I think it also just shows you like how your body reacts to that, of like whenever you're nourishing your body and you're taking care of your body and you're making good choices for your body, if you go off on a bender and you're making decisions that aren't really great for your body will show you exactly like, we're not happy with you. Why are you doing this to me?
For sure.
So I think that, so many people talk about health and wellness, and I think everybody, I'm not going to say everybody, but I'd say in today's world, in 2023, I think that there's a greater understanding that more of it lies into what you eat and your nutrition, more so than like, hey, I'm just going to go to the gym and I'm going to burn this off and I'm going to do some crazy boot camps, or I'm going to go running. That it's all of it kind of relies in your nutrition, which is why I think it's so important. Like what you're doing and having this conversation is so people like can understand their food, because like no matter what, whether your goals are fat loss or your goals are just like, I generally want to just be healthier and feel comfortable in my body and less achy and more awake and all of those things, like it's going to come down to what you're putting into your body.
Right. And I mean, I think we get this bad rep that, the people that are struggling are just binge eating all the time and just having too much food. But the conversation that I'm having more is getting people to actually eat more on a regular basis and just to have those regular meal times, breakfast being the worst offender. Most people come to me and they're like, well, I'm not a breakfast eater. I don't feel like eating in the morning. Well, the only way to train your body to want to eat in the morning is to eat in the morning, so that your body is looking for that stimuli. You gotta give it the option to have that cue. My mom is the worst offender. She's talked to me for years about how she wants to change things and whatnot. But I'm like, just eat 3 solid meals a day. That's all I need from you. I don't care what you eat. Just eat 3 meals per day. And she struggles with that so bad. She just wants to get up and go and doesn't have time to stop and eat. And I think that that's a trap that a lot of people get stuck in. And then we end up swinging too hard in the evening when our bodies are trying to catch up and be like, where's all of our calories for the day?
Yeah. Like we're so hungry. And I found myself do it. 'Cause I mean, I would say for me in general, like I always want to eat, even when I'm not hungry, I want to eat. But like when the couple times, and again, this is an old system because this is well over a decade ago, 15 years ago, when I did Weight Watchers a couple times. Whatever iteration of Weight Watchers that was, I don't even know what it is now, like how it works. But at that time, it was just very strict on like point counting. And like everything was points. I know there's like 0 points for stuff now, like that didn't exist at this time. But it stressed me out so much that I wouldn't eat all day because I'm like, I'm going to run out of points. Like I'm not going to have enough food. But it's so funny that like, because of that, I would starve myself all day. I would have like, an ice cube for breakfast and like just nibble at lunch. 'Cause I'm like, oh my God, I'm going to run out. And then at night I'd be like, I have 20 something points that I got to eat now. And then I would just like eat. Like, I don't know why this was a jam, like at one of the times I was on Weight Watchers, but I'm like, in order to make up those points, I thought it was awesome to just eat a butt ton of refried beans and cheese.
I was going to say, bring out the shredded cheese.
Yeah. And so like, I don't know why refried beans, but like that was and you know what? I like enjoy that, but I haven't ever really eaten it since. So just even talking about how weird of like how that system for me, like it didn't work. I know Weight Watchers has worked for other people like amazingly, not knocking Weight Watchers, but it's like for me, it spun me into this anxiety and made me starve myself. It made me freak out. It gave me anxiety. It made me like eat foods that I haven't eaten before or since really. I've not like busted out multiple cans of refried beans and cheese since I did Weight Watchers. So it's like, that it's just weird of like how you think that how everybody reacts to everything. And again, like one size doesn't fit all, but like, how I think not doing that during the day, I think it's because you're stressing because you're going to run out. Or
doing activities so you could eat more food. Yeah,
that too. And you know what? I never did that. Like that is something that I didn't do on Weight Watchers or when I was tracking stuff. And like as far as like weight loss goes and like my Fitness Pal, because my Fitness Pal will tell you like what you can burn or whatever. Or even your Fitbit, all that other stuff. And that was something that I just ignored because I personally just felt like, you don't know me, robot.
That's right, robot. You hear that, AI?
Right,
you don't know us.
I'm sure it does. It's going to give me ads about it now. But like I mean, not saying that's a good or bad thing either, but I would lean on the side that it's not a great thing for you. Because again, like how does your watch really know? Like my watch,
Right.
even though as much as AI and information that we plant into those things, it's like not my living organism body to tell me that these steps actually like counteracted these refried beans I ate.
Right. Yeah. I mean, there's so much that goes into it for everybody personally with how their systems are optimized and stuff, that these apps and watches and all of that don't get that input. They don't have that information. So,
I would err on the side of not doing that. And then I feel like then you're just working out to burn calories, which shouldn't be the goal of working out. It should be to like move your body and enjoy the process, get stronger, all of those things. Not like I am just here to burn off my food. I think that goes into a really bad mental space too. Just like, I think that I don't see it as much anymore, but for a while, like it was up all the time of like, how many jumping jacks do you have to do to burn off these Skittles and stuff like that? Where it's like, first off, don't make me cry. No. Yeah. I don't need to know that information. Shut up.
Yeah.
And I'm like, and I'm not going to do it. And like, that's just like, I don't, like a way to make me just feel awful about like making a choice that was like a happy choice for a minute. You know what I mean? I don't know. Like all that stuff, I feel like the world is chilled out on a little bit more and given us more like better knowledge towards it rather than just this like Biggest Loser style.
I was just thinking the same thing.
Really?
So me and one of Sarah's other clients, we actually were finalists to go on The Biggest Loser. We made it all the way down to LA. We were in like the final casting.
No way.
Yeah. This was pre weight loss surgery days. And we went through all the auditions and met with the producers and all the things and didn't end up on the show. But like, that's what we thought. We thought that was what it was going to take for us to be able to do it, is we needed,
work out 8 hours
for to be sequestered for weeks, somewhere in LA, and just walk all day long and use a, fitness tracker to see how many calories we could burn. And
God, what was that process like? Was that like, that seems like awful to be like, let me weigh myself in front of everyone. And then like you basically decide if my obesity is good enough for your TV show.
Right. Yeah. It was pretty wild to, go through and try to like tell your story and try to, I don't know, capture enough attention from the producers to end up there. And we were very disappointed when we didn't get on. But ultimately I feel like the universe figured it out and we ended up where we needed to be.
Yeah.
But very disappointing at the time when we made it all that way. And
I know, well, because then you could have got it for free. You could have gotten you could have just worked out all day instead of going to a job. I mean, that does kind of sound kind of legit. Some of their workouts though, like, I don't know. I think I've only watched like one season start to finish. And it was the one season where where everybody thought she lost too much weight. And that was like a controversy for like a minute. That was maybe like a decade ago or so.
Yeah.
And that was a thing. That was the only season I watched start to finish. And almost just like, you're watching everybody like throw up from working out. I'm like, whoa.
Yeah.
That's intense.
I will say it's been like years since I've tried to figure out how many calories my workouts have burned or whatever. It's not even something that I even like look at or consider anymore. And it used to be so important before.
Yeah, I feel that. Or just even, by the way, it's total trash of like whatever your treadmill or elliptical is telling you what you burned. Right. Like that is not real. Don't believe any of that. I mean, they all tell you that, but it like, that's not real. I can say that as a person who like worked at a couple different fitness places and like dealt with the people that like did maintenance on the fitness equipment. Like that's don't change your life based off of what an elliptical tells you what you burned. That's not real. But yeah, like that just sounds like an anxiety attack. Again, it's like, I think it's when it's like this like overwhelming counting and hoarding. I feel like that's, for me anyway, that's where I feel like it spins me into, it does the opposite for me. I'll stress out so much that I'll gain weight because I'm not doing enough, or I'm not doing it right, or I have to stay on this like an extra 30 minutes, or I didn't quote unquote earn what I'm going to eat. Like it's just such a spin cycle to be in versus like, this is what my food is giving me and I'm eating towards how like my food is fueling me versus like, how do I burn off this instead of seeing how it's nourishing you versus this thing that I don't know, like it can't even really describe it, how food, like I think in that sort of headspace of burning off calories like that, like you're not even really seeing your food as fuel. You're seeing it as something that should not exist. It's something that shouldn't be in your body that you need to get rid of. So I don't know. It's so interesting. I feel like we've culturally moved out of that a little bit more than where we used to be. Not saying that that's gone, but it's definitely, I think, in a healthier headspace in 2023 than it was in like 2013, which is good.
I absolutely agree.
So if somebody is listening to this and they're like, dang, okay, so I relate to this in so many levels. I want to have access to these 200 calories and like have Jess take my grandma's recipe and macro fit it for me. Like, what's the process? Just reaching out to Sarah, signing up, all of that. You give me the spiel.
Yeah. I mean, if people want, one-off, macro information, whatever, they can always message me on my Instagram. They can reach out to Sarah through our contact form, and we can, get you set up with a consult with Sarah and talk about, joining the team and whatnot, if that was something that you're interested. But I'm always happy to chat with people on Instagram, and so is Sarah. We're always happy to have a conversation with people and figure out, what's going on and if we'll be a good fit. And, if you have any questions, we're always happy to help. Like, that's really why both of us got into this. We really want to help people and not go down those same destructive paths that we've gone through in the past, trying to find a better way of getting there, a little bit less destructive way, and not beating up on our bodies so hard. Because I think that's a lot of what we're kind of sold, is just to like really just, I mean, I was told from my bariatric team that I was going to eat 800 to 1,000 calories for the rest of my life.
Yeah, that's
that'd be really sad.
Yeah, right.
Really sad.
Yeah, that sounds like very hungry. Wait, I just ate that like 5 minutes ago.
Yeah, I think I've definitely had at least that today so far. So, and we're only midday. So
what's your Instagram handle so people can find you there?
I am Jess V_fit with me.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining me. And also thank you for I've made your recipes and they were all very delicious. And I helped see it like a point again, talk about like stress in my life when I was working with Sarah, that I was just like, my brain is fried. I cannot think of like what I want to build out for myself right now. Like I can't do that. And so there was weeks that I reached out to you of like, okay, or Sarah gave you my macros and to help build me a menu so I can meal prep, because I'm like, I just don't have capacity. Like I enjoy doing that, but it's like knowing yourself, and that again, talk about having the help where it's like, please create this for me. I'll go buy all the ingredients and I'll cook it all. And you just made my life like a billion times easier. Is just
decision
so
fatigue
helpful.
Is so real. Decision fatigue, like it gets all of us. And so sometimes it is really nice just to be like, here, try this and see how this works. Just do these things. Yeah. And you get to just follow the instructions and move along with the other things that you have to make decisions on for the rest of the week.
Right? Yeah. Super helpful. So teamfitwithme.com, reach out and go, follow on Instagram. I'll put all the links in the show notes. And Jess, thank you so much again for your time and for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
AmandaValentineBites.com